Hello, neighbor. Welcome back to the CatBeyond podcast. I'm CatBeyond. I hope that you're having a beautiful morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. This episode is going to be a very slow one, pretty calm, and I think you'll begin to understand why my energy is the way it is. When I give you some backstory, and also as we go through this episode, you'll understand why I felt called to do this episode while I'm in this certain kind of overly calm place, like incredibly slow, just very like almost hushed. I don't feel like being loud or exuberant. I really just want this certain kind of clean, calm feeling because it's what's really resonating for me inside right now. And this episode is mostly about how Libra season is so different this year and why we can't really expect what we normally get out of a Libra season, but we can expect, I would say, that plus, especially Scorpio energy, especially Aries energy, and Virgo energy. Really, we have this strange confluence between Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and Aries on the opposite side of them. And it's doing some strange things, but some really potentially lovely and necessary things. I feel like maybe lovely is a bit of a generous word to say, because I think through this it will feel pretty intense, hence the scorpionic elements coming through that I've been feeling for like the last 3 days. I think it was like quite a few days ago I started to realize like, oh, this is not a normal Libra season coming. And I'm recording this on the first day of Libra season. The sun went into Libra this morning. And what I will say is, like, normally every seasonal change, I feel it. I feel it for about a week before, and then the first week of, like, at the very least. I think a lot of people do, because there really is this sort of, like, shifting happening. Like, hence why the equinoxes and the solstices have been celebrated and ritualized and honored for so long by so many cultures, because there is this palpable shift at every season change. And I felt this last year, of course, and last year was a really intense change for me, like an intense cutting feeling. The day, I think it was, I believe it was the day that the sun went into Libra, like my life shifted dramatically from what it was the day before, and I was having to deal with like a whole different set of things to process emotionally and mentally and physically. Like, just so much changed overnight for me. And I will say, like, last Libra season did have a lot of scorpionic elements for me personally. So in that way, I think it was a preview. I would say that last Libra season was the start of my intuition around what 2020 held. So like Libra season of 2019, but especially Scorpio season of 2019, I was like, oh, something really intense is happening. And I don't want to use the word terrible, because I always feel that things happen long-term for the betterment and the progress of the whole, is what I would say. Not just like humanity, but the whole of everything. But short-term things can feel really terrible, even if there are elements of loveliness and beauty within them. Like, I think it's important to honor when things hurt and when things require our gentleness and tenderness. And I do think that Libra season is interesting because Libra has these two sides to itself. It is the sign associated with the scales and justice, and so it has this incredibly sharp, almost authoritative, domineering side to it. Can be very like not so much the dictator in the sense of like control, but in the sense of the final judgment, the final decision, and just really like laying down the law, like this is it, this is my judgment of right and wrong, black and white. But then there's this other side of Libras that is so tender, so sweet, such a flower, just such a a breeze in the air, the way that Libra season comes in and cools things off and just sort of puts this haze of like softness over things. It's so strange how it's sharp and soft at the same time. It's maybe this reason that I've always found Libras compelling yet confusing, because there is such a duality in them. And despite being the sign of balance, most Libras, like, that's kind of one of their lifetime or like lifelong aspirations, is to find the balance between the sides of themselves. And maybe that's a similar resonance to Geminis and Pisces, is what I would say are the two most like the signs with the most duality, and then the signs like associated most with striving for balance. So I think that's something that I resonate with Libras about. It looks really different than Geminis often, and definitely from Pisces, but I do think that there's very similar elements. Something else about Libras I wanted to say. Let's take a sip of water. So Libra coming after Virgo, what does that mean? Virgo as the sign of discernment, as the sign of harvest, taking into account all of the details and the facts, leaving no stone unturned, really looking at every single thing that is on the table and under the table and under the floors and in the ground. Like Virgo really looks at everything that's there, and then in a way they distill it, but they sort of only start doing that. It's kind of like they're able to take account of everything and put it in this almost digestible way. Like I picture them gathering all the facts and then putting it onto a spreadsheet, and then Virgo gives that spreadsheet to Libra and is like, here's what the situation is, here's where everything stands, here's where we're at. Now I would like you to make the decisions about what we do about that. And so Virgo has a huge job, of course, but Libra has a very big job. And it's interesting because I'm a Gemini, and most of my placements, a lot of my placements are in the first half of the zodiac. I don't want this to be taken in any way condescending, but some of the jobs of the first the first 5 zodiac signs are a little bit lighter, and a little bit more, it's not that there's small scale, but they're maybe more personalized of a scale. And so it's easier to sort of conceive of and perceive what those jobs are. And once we get to this turning point at the very end of the first half of the zodiac, which is Virgo, and then as we're going into that second half, it's really taking a lot of that very important foundational setup that has happened as because of the jobs that the other 5 or 6 signs have accomplished, depending on how good of a job they did, which let's not even go there. But if that foundation is set up right, then to be honest, the last 6 signs have an even bigger job, because the more thorough that we were in the beginning, the more can be built on that foundation, the more it can hold. And so Virgo is also this sign of saying, like, here's all the work that we've done up until this point, and so here's what we can stand, like, here's what our capacity is, and here's where we're not going to be able to do maybe everything that we thought we could, because there were certain things that didn't get done for whatever reasons. So, like, this year is different in the sense that we were able to accomplish very different things because of quarantine and pandemic, and we were also pushed to do things in a different way. And so it's a new sort of foundation on which to build, and really it was lacking in a lot of the same, like, social scaffolding is what I would say, like, where the first 5 signs are especially social typically. Like, yes, people say things about, like, Cancer being the hermit crabs and really, like, loners and stuff, but for the most part there's a lot of extroverted energy around Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and especially Leo. A lot of this, like, outward energy. And this year we didn't get to indulge in that in the same way. And something that I've said about quarantine, maybe not in a podcast, I can't remember, but I didn't think that it was a coincidence that quarantine started basically right before Aries season, which is the start of the zodiac year. And so what I was saying is, I don't feel that quarantine will be, like, done. Like, I think it will change and evolve over the coming, say, 6 months, but I don't feel like, I feel like quarantine is a look at how each sign deals with a pandemic, with quarantine, with something drastically different. And so, like, Aries season was so, positive about quarantine. It was like, all right, we can do this. We're going to make the best of this. We're going to, like, accomplish, like, 20,000 things during this. Like, think of all this time and all this great opportunity. And, and every season after that was, like, the pandemic version of that sign, or that sign's version of pandemic. And Virgo was a very interesting version of, a pandemic. And I think that as we go into Libra season, like, that softer, lighter side of Libra, I foresee it taking a bit of a back seat. Like, it'll still be there, and I hope that it will come out. But the point of the duality with Libra is that when it has sort of done its, like, cleaning and beautifying, it gets to really revel in that richness and in that luxury. But until that point, it can be very serious. Like, some of the Libras I know are some of the most, like, militant, austere people, or people with those Libra placements. They can be so lighthearted and joyful and joyous, but a lot of them are, like, really hard workers. Like, really sort of, that's a very resonant thing with Virgos, that, like, Libras want to have fun, but they're very serious about getting their work done, and then, like, really freaking relaxing. Let's take another little water break. So, pandemic being still quite serious, and Libra being this sign of social justice very often, it really shares that with Aquarius as its fellow air sign. There is so much work to do for Libra. Like, I just got chills saying that. Libra has a bigger job this year than it has in many, many years. And I don't really know what's going to come of that. I think what Virgo may have reported to Libra was, like, there is so much work to be done, but we're not going to be able to do it all this year. And so it's like Virgo may have even had more information than ever, because the way that the planets have been really shining light on the shadows and just calling things out, making things so seen where they once were hidden. Virgo saw a lot more this year, and it might have been why I felt that the last half of Virgo season got really intense, because as we moved away from Leo and closer to Libra, it was like, oh man, there's actually so much more detail available here than ever before. The way that the veils are so thin and possibly non-existent anymore, and like I said, that light shining in the shadows from all of these Capricorn planets, and especially Pluto in Capricorn, there was just so much more for Virgo, and in turn us, to see this Virgo season. And so this year Virgo is coming up with all these details for Libra, like it's a big report, to give Libra, but it's also saying, okay, but we're still in pandemic, we're still restricted on certain fronts, and some of these past zodiac signs weren't able to do their normal job because of those restrictions. And so Virgo's like, we have a really strong foundation in certain ways, so you can build on that, but in other ways, we're going to have to wait till, honestly, next year before we can get to some of these things. So I sense with Libra that there is a certain determination, but also a certain frustration, because more than ever we're aware of the work, but more than ever we have these restrictions placed on us. And Libra as an air sign, although it likes a certain amount of, I don't know what the word is, it's not restriction, it's like it likes not so much boundaries or guidelines, but like it likes to know where the ropes and the borders are. But as an air sign, it does not like to be held to that. It will make its own decisions, thank you very much, as to what its boundaries are, because it's very good at discerning what those boundaries should be for the most part. The other aspect is, like I started to talk about, that a few days before today, before the sun went into Libra, the moon was in Scorpio. It had gone into Scorpio for the few days before. And even before it did, I was feeling Scorpio energy pretty intensely, like for the past couple weeks. And I said it on Instagram maybe a couple weeks ago, I can't remember. And quite a few people agreed with me that they were already feeling that Scorpio feeling. And at the time, nothing was in Scorpio. But Pluto is in Capricorn. It's getting ready to go direct. Pluto is ruled by Scorpio. And we have Jupiter and Saturn on either side of Pluto, getting ready to interact with it more heavily, because Jupiter has gone direct. It will soon be crossing over Pluto again, which is going to be an intense moment, definitely. And Saturn, while it won't cross Pluto again directly, it's still quite a close conjunction. And as we go towards Capricorn season, even though Jupiter and Saturn will move into Aquarius, we're really still in this sort of like recovery phase over this intense Capricorn stellium that we've had this year. Stellium meaning 3 planets in one sign. So I'm getting a little bit off track. What I haven't done yet that I kind of wanted to do was give a bit of a backstory, and I know we're like already kind of a ways into this episode, but I thought it would be better to like jump in and then give backstory. So there were 2 episodes that I had meant to publish before this point. one was a new moon in Virgo episode, and I was really torn whether I would sort of obligate myself to record that or not, because in one of the previous episodes I had said, I'm not going to focus too much on the moons. I don't know that I'll necessarily make specific episodes for full moon and new moons, but the intensity of that moon, and then I kind of went against that, and I made that Virgo season full moon in Pisces episode, and I was really happy with that, and I felt like I shared some things that I was feeling that I really wanted to express, and I got some great feedback on that episode. And the new moon in Virgo, likewise, was very intense, and there was so much that I had to say about it. But this is sometimes a quirk of mine, let's call it, that sometimes the more I have to say, the less I actually do say. And it's something that I associate with both my Virgo placements and my Scorpio placements, but most importantly, I think the Virgo placement, because it's very, I'm picking up on so much, I'm gathering so much information, but it's because that information just keeps rolling in, and I'm also trying to analyze it and discern it at the same time, there's not really room for me to express what I've taken in. Hold on one little sec. So I didn't end up recording that, but I did end up recording an episode about Mars retrograde and a little bit about Jupiter direct. And I recorded that episode about 4 times and still decided not to post it, at least not yet. And that sort of was the opposite of that, having so much to say that I don't say anything. It was I had so much to say that I said so much, but it felt messy, and there was so much meat to that. It was a very juicy episode and topic, and I still do plan on discussing Mars retrograde because there's just so much to it. But I felt I don't know, it was more I needed to wait until Libra season to be out of that absorption of detail mode around Mars retrograde, because those first, it's been 2 weeks now since about 2 weeks since Mars went retrograde, and so I feel those first 2 weeks were just this big intense energy, and the days before it too, and we'll talk about that in the episode that I actually post about that. But my point is, Virgo season got weird. The last half of it got heavy and intense, but more so it got busy. It got to where I was very aware of all the things that I needed to be doing, and there weren't a lot of moments that I felt able to sit down and talk in any sort of super calm way. And I know that I could come at Mars retrograde or whatever the subject is with a bit more maybe fire, especially given that it's Mars retrograde, but I find that I don't feel so succinct that way, and I don't know what it was about it, but anyway, that was just sort of my backstory about leading up to this point, and saying those were some of my clues as to how different the energy feels. And I'm very happy that we're in Libra season, even though I feel it's going to be intense. And what I will say is that some astrologers say that we're getting a break in October, or at least for the first few weeks of October. I don't know that I agree. I think a break in certain ways, yes. But I think we're also going to be asked to dive so deep. And I think what I was saying about how Virgo has probably told Libra yeah, we're not going to be able to get to everything this year because of all these restrictions. I think that I think that Libra is going to basically say, like, all right, well, if we can't go out, we're going to go in so hard. Like, if we have these restrictions in the outside world, then, like, let's recruit Scorpio and dive really deep inside, and not just inside ourselves, but on the sort of inner energy, on the sort of like root deep energy of what's going on, and change what we can there, maybe sort of intellectualize and illuminate some of the problems that we're having socially, collectively, and see where that collective pain lies. So I feel like Libra is already recruiting Scorpio, and we will have Mercury go into Scorpio in just a few days on the 27th of September, and I feel like that will be a pretty intense start to that Scorpionic energy, where it's like right now I feel like we're building with that, sort of knowing that it's coming, it's on the horizon. But as soon as that kicks in, it's like, okay, so it's here, we have the energy to do it now. And tomorrow, actually the 23rd, Mercury retrograde shadow begins, meaning that, and I discussed this in a previous episode, meaning that everything that happens from then until Mercury actually goes retrograde on, let me see, on the 13th of October. So anything that happens between the 23rd and the 13th of October will be reviewed for the 3 weeks after that. And then, again for post-shadow phase. So what can we do is, I suppose, the question. What can we do with this different kind of intensity Libra season? I think we have to go the Scorpio route in a certain way. I think that we take the beauty of Libra, we take the ability to cut away and get this incredible, clean, pristine energy that it has in common with Virgo, but Libra does it even more so. Like, I knew a Libra rising who could plate food so well, and then it was like there was less food on the plate, and somehow it tasted more rich, more delicious, more filling, and more fancy the way he plated it, where it was like those like clean, minimal luxuries that fill you in an entirely different way, because it's filling some sort of like sensory aesthetic need that I wouldn't say we all have. I can't speak for everybody, but I certainly do, and I think many of us do. So I think that aspect of Libra has to be present, of course. I think that it would be a waste not to use some of this Libra energy for self-improvement. And on the physical level, there is a really interesting balance where the Mars being retrograde in Aries, which as I said, I'll talk about it in a different episode, but it being in Aries for so long, Aries is such a sign of energy and somewhat of physicality, like the sort of physical channeling of that energy, of that fire. And Libra season is a time that you can work on your physical appearance, also your energetic appearance. And I think Mars being in opposition to the Sun in Libra gives us this ability to harness a pretty amazing amount of energy, and also see where our energy is sort of not just draining, but like where there is a hole, that energy might be like seeping out, leaking. That's the word I'm thinking of. So yes, in Libra season, we want to work on appearance, but also how we appear to ourselves, and how we strategize in coordination with what we want to clear away, what we want to add to our lives, how we want our lives to look and to feel. Because something that I associate with Libra, not that every Libra has this, but I think a lot of Libras have this in common, of wanting a beautiful space, a beautiful life, a sense of peace around them. Again, it's something that's really shared with Virgos, but in a different way. And that Libra also wants to feel really beautiful as a part of their surroundings. And they also want to be stimulated, but in the right ways, in those sensorily pleasing ways that are associated with Venus and with Taurus. There's, a lot of kinship with Libra and Taurus. So that looking into like, how do you want your life to appear and to feel? But I don't want you to think that that's in any way vain or superficial or vapid. I think that sometimes having any sort of care or putting any sort of energy into appearance or wanting your life to look or feel beautiful can be minimized and chastised as being vain and being egotistical, when I don't think it is. I think when you think about how beautiful this world is in its natural form, and then how we have changed it in order to be productive and safe and all of these wonderful aspects of human progress, I think that it's natural for us to then say, like, okay, so we've created this system, this structure that our world runs on. What if that is a nuisance? What if that is ugly? What if that sort of hurts our souls and our eyes at the same time? And can we get rid of that? Can we make it more beautiful? Can we make it more seamless? Can we make it flow? Can we make there be this harmony? Libra is a sign of harmony. A harmony between the natural beauty that the earth has to offer and then what we create as humans to more efficiently, safely, healthfully live in this world. So I don't think it's vapid, and I don't think that you should in any way judge yourself if you find yourself thinking about your appearance or the appearance of your life. You obviously have to balance that with not getting obsessive over it, not necessarily comparing to other people's lives, because we really have to discern what is it that we want our lives to look like. If we have infinite possibilities, which of those do we choose, or at least what step feels a little bit closer to what we like? So if it gets a little bit overwhelming about that big picture, about everything that we want in our lives, come back to the present moment and think, what would make me feel more in a greater sense of harmony or peace or calm right now? Or if that's not what you're looking for, if you're looking for something a bit wilder than that, well, first of all, I don't know how you would have made it this far into the podcast, since I'm in no way giving chaotic energy today, I don't think, and generally I try not to. But if you are, then how can you bring that into your life? If you want drama, how can you bring drama into your life? There are people out there who want that. I don't know that I necessarily attract them to me, but hey, everybody's welcome here. So that being said, that's what I was sort of saying about that Libra element that I think we all want to channel. But we're going to have to channel the Scorpio whether we want to or not, whether we consciously agree to or not. It's going to be here, and if we fight it, it'll drag you down. It's like if you're trying to stay above the water, and so you're like refusing to take a deep breath, but then some like Ursula from The Little Mermaid drags you down. You'll wish that you'd taken that breath, knowing that you were going to go down, whether you made the conscious choice to swim down or whether Ursula pulls you down. So that becomes a more complicated question of what you're going to find down there, and that's not something that I can generalize. It's something that if you want to go over in a session, I feel that that would be the way that I could best serve you in that regard. I do think, of course, with everything, that meditation is super helpful. I think doing breath work and energy work, if you know how to do those things, are incredibly helpful. If you want to book with me to help you in any of those things, and sort of specifically to tailor a holistic approach to what I think inevitably is going to come up for people this season, I'm always here, and I'm always very flexible. I really want to be able to work with as many people as possible, so if there's anything that hinders you from working with me, whether that is timing or budget or something else, please feel free to let me know, and if I can work through your like whatever's going on for you, I will do my best to do so. That being said, something that I could see working for a wide range of people is dancing. It's something that I generally encourage, but I think now with this certain kind of it's a heavy element, but there's a heavy sensuality to it. And that is a certain place where Libra and Scorpio can kind of meet, where Scorpio is associated so much with sexuality, and that's a whole other topic that we'll probably get into in Scorpio season, because I think that that's a vast oversimplification of Scorpio energy, and something that is almost a projection of our times and our culture, and what our culture seems to associate with. I'm actually getting like kind of disgusted thinking about my understanding of why people think of Scorpio as such a sexual sign. I can't go there right now. So, but I will say I think it's very indicative of some issues in our society. That being said, I think that if you can tap into that primal element, that I think sometimes people confuse primal, animal, and sexual, because yes, of course, there's overlap between those things, but primal is pure, is almost nameless and shapeless and genderless, sexless, formless. Primal is that pure Aries energy, and it's, I think, why Aries and Scorpio are so heavily associated with each other. So I think that if you can dance and do some sort of primal dance, if you're dancing to more tribal music, or I don't know exactly how to describe what I'm saying, but I would say it's not that you need to stay away from pop music, but if you can get into something that's a little bit less specific and a little bit more formless, a bit of a blank canvas of sound that just sort of triggers in you this sense of connection to your primal self, I think that moving to that would allow you to channel and alchemize a lot of the energy that's coming through. And you might even find that it's a form of moving meditation, that if you're having a lot of thoughts come up in your mind, which it's going to be interesting because Venus is going into Virgo on the 2nd of October, which we'll talk about in the October astrology episode. But because Libra is ruled by Venus, and because then Venus will be in Virgo, there will be a sort of resurgence of this intense mental energy, and I believe that it will affect our heart in a certain kind of way, because it's like all of that mental energy of Virgo mixing with the heart energy of Venus. I think it's going to be really necessary, because sometimes there can be a lack of communication between head and heart, or one almost judging the other sometimes. And so I think it's going to be beautiful, but I think it's also going to enlighten a lot of us as to where we're not cooperating those two energies together, and how we could better we could feel better and think better and exist as a whole better if those two elements of head and heart were in a greater communion with each other. So that tangent was just to say that I think that there will be a lot of mental energy to work through, and I think channeling it in a sort of scorpionic way might behoove all of us. So I think that's just about it on what I want to say in Libra season. I'm sure that in the October episode I'll get a little bit more into that, and as we move into some other placements associated with Libra, things will get even more interesting. I hope that this episode resonated with you today, and I hope that you found it beneficial to listen to. If you did, and if you feel like you would want to donate or add to the tip jar, one listener listened to one of my episodes and asked if she could have my Venmo so that she could send me a little bit of a tip. And I thought that was super sweet, and it had never occurred to me before that you could do that on a podcast, because I had never intended to monetize this. But I just felt like, saying that if you feel these resonate, and if you want me to do more of these, and you want to just support me in this venture, in this project, my Venmo is CatBeyond, so at CatBeyond with Venmo. And I would, appreciate any tips that you send my way, but I also would appreciate any sort of feedback, any comments. If you want to comment on one of my posts on Instagram, I would love to hear how this episode sat with you, and if it sparked anything within you, and just any general thoughts that you have around things that we've discussed today. I hope that you have a beautiful morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. I hope that you take care of yourself and give yourself some really good love. I do think this is going to be an intense season, but I think it's also going to be able to show us how necessary it is to give some of that Venusian love energy to ourselves. So I hope that you're able to find a way to do that. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.